But I think sometimes we just need to reframe that and have that willingness to problem solve with our kids rather than just punishing them or coming down on that outward expression of their displeasure, because that's really what the disobedience is. And instead, be willing to work with them on seeing what the real problem actually is. And then from there, moving forward, one of the biggest things with quote unquote like disobedience or our kids not listening or being in power struggles with them is having the willingness to loosen our grip a little bit. Because is it not true? I know, there's me doing my weird hand movements again. So much of our fighting or our disagreements with our kids are over things where we are trying to overly control or micromanage, whether it's putting the boots on or how you sweep the floor or whatever it is, right? We're always trying to show them the right way to do it. And part of that sometimes is just letting go a little bit and letting them do it their own way and letting them figure it out on their own without constantly giving pointers or micromanaging, because that, can you imagine in your own life how frustrating that would be if someone was standing over your desk as you were working, constantly pointing out mistakes or telling you which way to do things? So I think a part of dealing with disobedience is just kind of letting go a little bit and being okay with allowing our kids to either A, do things differently, or B, make a few mistakes along the way. And then you can help them through that as they navigate those bumps in the road. And something actually, I found this really helpful as I was starting the process of trying to loosen my grip on my kids and constantly managing everything they were doing, is when we would start to butt heads, I would just ask myself, like, is this worth fighting over? Are we really fighting over whether you are going to wear your rubber boots or your winter boots? Because really, like, does it matter? Does it really and truly matter? Is this something worth fighting about? Am I calling him disobedient because he won't put on the boots that I want when really it doesn't matter at all? Like, why not just let him choose on his own? So that's something, like, just having that awareness for me and telling myself, like, okay, Kelly, is this worth fighting about? 9 times out of 10, it was absolutely not worth fighting about. So that was my way to kind of give him a little bit more rope and allow him to start making some more of his own decisions. Another option for dealing with disobedience or power struggles in the moment when you're locking heads with your kids is to also have that mindset of coming in peace. Instead of fighting, because I know, like, I'm sure I'm not the only one out there who wants to sometimes meet fire with fire, but when you meet fire with fire, what do you get? A big freaking explosion in your face, right? Whereas instead, if you can counter their fire with a little bit of peace and a little bit of calm, you'll be so much further ahead in trying to work on solutions together rather than just constantly engaging in that locking of horns. So just think of yourself as being that presence of peace. I know even as I say that, it's like, I'm sure some of you want to just like punch me in the throat because I know it can feel impossible, but it feels impossible for me too sometimes. And it's something I'm constantly working on. It's just one of those things I try to always keep in my back pocket when I'm faced with my kids not listening or not cooperating or being disobedient and I just want to freak out and give them the what for, is coming in peace, countering their fire with a little bit of calm. And it's not always easy and I don't always succeed, but I'm always working on it. Another big one that kind of goes along with coming in peace is asking instead of telling. Again, I am guilty of this a million times over, is just telling my kids what to do. Do this, get that, put that there, do that. Like I'm just barking orders at them, right? Because I'm trying to be efficient and have the nice running of the household or get out to school on time, when really for my kids, like, can you imagine if somebody was just barking orders at you without asking or being polite, and just, you wouldn't really like that person very much, would you? And I know for me, like, I probably would not be very willing to cooperate with them. And it's no different with our kids. So I know it can feel counterintuitive at times to just say, could you please do this, or would you mind doing that? But it really helps. It really does, because it helps our kids feel like they're part of a solution rather than having mom or dad over them, just like, you know, just even that motion is like, oh, it's so gross. So try asking instead of telling, winning their cooperation rather than barking orders, looking for that cooperation rather than just making commands or demands. You'll get a lot more buy-in. Also, the other thing too, if you're finding a lot of disobedience or pushback in certain situations, like one that comes up for me all the time, I get tons of questions about, is kids acting out in public or acting up in the grocery store, or just it being a total freaking disaster, right? And how to deal in those situations. And if you find that your like disobedient or uncooperative behavior is always in a similar situation, practice. I love this idea of practicing trips to nowhere, because I know I need to explain myself. So essentially what it is practicing this situation that's giving you a lot of stress and a lot of problems when you don't actually have to get groceries, when you don't actually have to run that errand, when you don't actually have a doctor's appointment. Because I find it's in those situations where we have to get XYZ for the birthday party, or we're already running 5 minutes late for the doctor's appointment, that when our kids don't cooperate, our stress starts building, and then they start not cooperating and we start coming down on them, and it's just like the perfect storm. When we can practice these trips and these outings, or whatever situation it is you're finding you're having trouble winning your kids' cooperation, if you can practice going to Walmart when you actually don't have to buy anything, your sole purpose is literally just to practice the steps of what it's like to hold mom's hand crossing the street, and what it's like to stand beside her in the store, and what it's like to wait patiently at the checkout aisle, so that if you encounter any difficulty or any pushback or struggle, you can just leave. You don't have to turn it into like, again, we've all been there, where you're like dragging your kids through the store, just like, or hanging on for dear life at the checkout, just like, please bag my groceries faster so I can get the freaking heck out of here, right? You can just bail if you need to. So you can take advantage of that teaching opportunity when it's low stakes, because I find that really helped lower my stress, which in turn enabled me to be more calm and just to respond to my kids more in line with how I would want to respond to them, rather than just reacting negatively and punitively and coming down on them, because then, of course, it just breeds more fireworks all around, and not the good kind. And then one thing I'm thinking of, I know I've talked a lot about disobedience for younger kids, but if you're dealing with older kids who are rebelling or acting out, maybe in more serious ways, and you're not like gonna practice public outings with them because they're past that stage, it's really about learning to effectively communicate. And like, a lot of us really suck at this, and I'm not trying to like put you down, because it's something that I am constantly trying to work on too, because it can feel really unnatural, it can feel weird, but it's so important to learn the skill of being able to express to someone how their actions are influencing you without shaming or blaming or name calling or being really punitive. It's such a huge leadership skill, just being able to express your hurt and express your displeasure without totally crapping on the other person. And a really great way to do that is through the idea of I statements. And I have it available in the download section below. There's a link in the description where you can download just a quick little resource guide on how to use I statements. And you can use this with your partner, with people at work, with your coworkers, with coaches, and also with your kids when they have done something that's really hurt your feelings or is really upsetting you, or what they did just totally was completely inappropriate. Using I statements, I felt really hurt when you called me a blank. I wish you would say this to me when you're upset. Like, just having that little framework for expressing those feelings. It'll feel weird and robotic at first. Like, I'm not gonna pretend that this is just gonna be easy peasy, because it's not, especially if you're getting used to it. But getting a handle on expressing those I statements and how you feel, it not only shows your kids that you come in peace and shows your kids that their actions are having a real negative impact on you or the family or whatever the situation is, but it's also teaching them how to do the same. Teaching them how to positively express when they are frustrated, or they're feeling hurt, or if they're feeling like their toes were stepped on, without squashing the other person or being a jerk, or because we can do that too, right? It's like, you hurt me, I hurt you back. So I statements are a really great way to get around that and really be clear and be firm without being passive or being really mean, right? And being a jerk yourself. So I would definitely recommend grabbing that download below. It's a total lifesaver. And the last thing before I leave you is, finally, again, this is one of those things where I don't think a video has gone by where I haven't said don't shoot the messenger, but having a personal awareness of our own actions and our own thoughts is so key, because our perception, it really does create our reality. So one thing you can do too is look at some of those negative labels you put on your kids, lazy or defiant or disobedient, and flip it to the more positive quality. Because man, oh man, am I ever finding that some of these qualities my kids have that cause me to grow the most gray hairs are also those qualities that are going to allow them to freaking kill it at life, to do whatever they want. The world is their oyster when they're not willing to give up, and when they can persevere through anything, and when they don't take no for an answer.